All right, Bill Hall, welcome to the Nervous Apes podcast.
Thank you.
It's good to have you today.
Yeah,
Happy
glad to be
Thanksgiving
here.
to you.
And likewise, thank you.
Um, I'd like to start. I'm just curious if someone asked you what you do for a living, would you say?
It's always my try to make it short. I manage a number of businesses. It, Most of them would be investments. Real estate would be one big one. Um, but currently, most of my time is spent managing a wholesale distribution business, selling very boring things like toilet seats and hardware and things like that to apartment complexes.
Gotcha. How long you been doing that?
Been doing that for in various within various companies that have been sold. I've been doing that for well over 20 years, but in the past 2.5 years, started a new business after a number of non-competes expired.
Mm-hmm.
So really started this new company about 2.5 years ago.
Gotcha. How did you get into all of that?
It was just a sort of a serendipitous thing that happened after college. Worked at a company doing that, and just guess I kind of got halfway decent at it over the years, and continued to do it. It's what I know pretty well. And
Mhm. Did you always plan to be a businessman?
well, I went to college for civil engineering,
Mm,
so I always kind of liked that sort of thing, construction and just stuff like that, technical things. Uh,
mm,
so I think after having gotten out of the army, that was probably where I was planning on what I was planning on doing. But
mm.
I don't know that I had a really well thought out plan.
Gotcha. Did you have an idea of what you were wanting to do when you got out of college?
I would say that as I
What was your
was,
dream job, essentially? What were you thinking about
it,
back then?
it would have been in some technical construction management type thing. You know,
Gotcha.
whether that was uh, environmental engineering, roads, construction, stuff like that. That was my special. That was what I had specialized at in college. And when I was in the army, I had done army engineering type stuff. So
Gotcha. So you mentioned the Army a couple times. How many years did you do in the Army?
all told, I did about 13 years. That it's kind of a combination of active duty and reserves and National Guard, which just got all jumbled up because of school and things like that.
Gotcha. Um, how long was that thought in your mind of becoming a soldier?
Probably going way back to high school, just not knowing what to do.
Yeah,
So,
it's fair.
yeah, it was something to do. I knew at that age that uh well, at that age I felt that college was not for me due
Mm-hmm.
to, maturity and just whatever
Mm-hmm.
whatever things that go through kids of that age. And I felt that that was, a good patriotic thing to do, and I was interested in that.
Mm.
Um, and I felt that that was a challenge uh, that that I wanted to do, but not a whole lot of really well planned out things going on there.
Yeah, that's fair. So you decided to go to the Army because you didn't really see college in the cards for you for whatever reason. What changed? You eventually went and got a degree, right?
Yes, having spent the time in the army, and just I kind of always wanted to learn stuff. That's just sort of stuck there. Sort of not a really clear thing to say, but just I was always interested in learning.
Yeah.
And I had some family members that strongly influenced me and guided me, suggested that that's the right thing to do. Um, and the opportunity came up. Uh, the opportunity came up. The timing was right, and I jumped in.
So you got a degree in civil engineering, and then what was your first gig out of college?
Well, that is how I got into this business. I actually took just a warehouse driver job um, with this same organization, an individual,
Oh,
so it really it was just a it ended up being a really good college job that was very flexible for me, and uh, and I just by the time it was time to graduate, we had another business that was growing at that time, and I just stuck with it.
wow. So you started working in the warehouse, and then worked your way up through the company, is what it sounds like. And now it sounds like you're managing a whole group of people.
Yes.
How
hmm
many people would you say you're responsible for in some capacity there?
With this iteration, I guess the wholesale company has just about 50, and then the real estate side, there's maybe another seven.
So that brings up, there's a you and I know each other through breathing and meditation. And I'm really curious on the managerial side. What has served you the most in terms of breathing and meditation when it comes to being the best manager you could possibly be?
It's a good question. I would say that prior to our formal training, the stuff that you and I've worked on and you've introduced me to, everything would be sort of instinctual or reactionary. And by
Mm,
reactionary, I don't necessarily mean, you know, shooting from the hip, but it was, I would just do things from a managerial standpoint. I would just do what made sense to me or what I thought. Whereas now, if I know that I'm faced with something that's a little bit more challenging, uh, I I can allow myself to take that pause and give a little thought. I know I've probably mentioned to you before, if I'm preparing for a challenging meeting, just when I say challenging, it doesn't have to mean stressful, but a lot of topics and big decisions, I can prep a little bit and just sort of center myself with breathing or just sort of slowing things down is another way that it's like I feel it slows down life sometimes if I can just sort of step back and prepare for it.
mm. And you feel like that in some way has made you better during those meetings?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, it again it smooths over the edges of the shooting from the hip or the reactionary approach.
Tell me more about that. What would reactionary have looked like in the past versus I like this idea of reacting versus responding, right? We talk all the time about the space between stimulus and response. That quote is oftentimes attributed incorrectly, apparently, to Viktor Frankl. He's probably the most commonly miscited or misquoted. There's no indication he wrote that quote in his book, but you see his name attached to it all the time. But the idea being that over the course of time, as you engage in breathing and meditation practices, especially when you combine the two, I love the synergistic effect of the two of them together. As you do that over the course of time, your reactions to a stimulus there's more space between the two of them. And the greater that space, the more freedom you have to choose a skillful response. So what would a reactionary response have looked like in the past versus a response that you might have now because that results because of your breathing and meditation practice.
So the space is a good way to kind of quickly describe that, or increasing the space. The a simple thought that comes to my mind would be stimulus coming my way, a situation, a problem that's presented to me, um, and I would respond. I might respond or reply without giving a lot of thought to how the response affects you, the person that I'm talking
Mm,
to, or the group of people. And that may have been okay from the intended mission, so to speak, or the intended goal, but I think it would uh, disregard how you or the person that I'm talking to, how they would perceive that response, and you could end up with really kind of a useless bit of uh, messaging. And when I say
mm,
useless, it could be negative. It could be
mhm.
okay. I mean, I'm not saying it's I wasn't like always flippant or anything like that, but
Right.
if you there's an unnecessary piece of that communication that could be taken the wrong way.
Yeah. I'm curious. So for me, for a really long time in conversation, didn't matter what the conversation was. It could just be a friendly conversation with a friend about politics or anything
Mm,
else. There was a part of me that wanted to win the conversation.
hmm hmm
And quite frankly, I didn't care how it landed with you, right? I didn't care if it hurt you. If in fact, if you said my feelings are hurt, I'd be like, I don't care. That's your problem. Those are your feelings, right?
Right.
That is your issue, not mine, right? And it took me a really long time, a lot of pain, a lot of fractured relationships for me to realize I don't think I want to do that anymore. And quite frankly, that didn't happen. And embarrassingly, it didn't happen until I was about 40 years old, right? And I turned 40, and it was I had never considered my future the way I did on the day of my 40th birthday. It was like 40 for whatever reason was the midway point. And I didn't even know it was the midway point until the day I turned 40. It was like, oh, I'm midway. It just kind of happened. And I started really reflecting on the way I interfaced with people up to that point and just realized, I wasn't as skillful as really I want to be for the second half of my life. But like I said, I didn't really care how it landed with people previously, and all of a sudden I did. And so I started seeking out practices. I got certifications in breathing, meditation, communication, just so I could be a more effective human being. I'm curious what was going on with you if you look back 10, 15, 20 years. Were you aware of the consequences of your reactions that weren't so skillful then? Or did it take some time? Were there consequences associated with it that later you realize, you just want to be better because those consequences stung a little bit? What was that process like for you?
I think that the answer is yes. Uh, I think that certainly sometimes when you're doing that stuff, you don't, well, either don't care or you don't see it. And maybe there were some times where you go to yourself, why didn't that person take that seriously, or why did they dismiss me or something like that? And then maybe you go back and look and you say, well, maybe it was the messaging, the way it was presented. Um, so there was certainly negative consequences, however much that might be, uh, to that kind of casual, flippant type of approach. And I keep going back to it's not maybe helpful. It's not. It doesn't add value, I guess is another way to say it. It could be, right? So there are certainly times when the direct, unvarnished truth is what I still think needs to be said.
Sure.
Uh, but there's times when, you can say it in such a fashion that it doesn't chafe as much, I guess.
Yeah, it just sounds to me like while you're talking that at some point, somewhere along the way, and maybe it was a gradual process, right, where you realized that there's a way to be more skillful in the way you're presenting information and trying to get people on board with whatever it is that you're trying to promote, right? I see so often with leadership in corporations, you know, there's a particular person that created a certain cell phone that I read his autobiography and I was just appalled. And you see famous CEOs and the way they oftentimes treat their people, and it seems to be that people in those positions oftentimes believe that, well, it's almost like parents. Well, a kid says, "Well, why do I have to do that?" And the parent says, "Because I said so," right?
Mm.
And it's almost like a paternalistic thing where managers oftentimes present the information they present and don't really care how it lands, and their attitude is just do it because I said so. And I think, quite frankly, most humans don't appreciate that very much. But that being said, so many CEOs are still wildly successful with that attitude. And I find that so interesting. And so I always appreciate when people, especially in a role like what you're in, where there are high stakes, there's a lot of money involved sometimes, um, and it would be really easy to just maintain that same attitude that you just do what I say when I say, and everything will be good. What was that process like for you? Was it gradual? Was it what comes to mind?
I think I think there's probably a an improvement over time, gradual, prior to really being aware through meditation and breathing.
Mm,
Prior to that experience, I'm sure I softened at times, but I became more aware of it once I started doing some meditation and breathing, which kind of, to me, for me, is one thing, uh, with components. But I would say, this is my opinion, those individuals that can do that and can be successful being that with that kind of, extreme approach, they're usually, again, my opinion, they're usually surrounded by other people that take other roles. Whether those other people mitigate that or, manage. I mean, me saying do it because I said so, and then there might be a core group of people around that CEO that that take that message and say, okay, here's how we're going to do that, and it doesn't have to come across, because I think that some people can accept that message, and,
mm,
like, you tell me, hey, this is how it's got to be, and I go, oh, okay, because,
hmm
because I respect you or trust you, or know that I think you're an expert. Um, uh, and other people are like, who's this guy, right? So you can have a group of people that can sort of mitigate that, or improve the message. But if you're
hmm
just that guy, it makes it tough because there's some people that just won't work with you or for you if you're that kind of person.
Yeah, I haven't been in the corporate world really ever, big corporate world really ever in my career, just because I don't I don't take to that very well
Yeah.
when someone tells me what to do. I have this knee-jerk reaction to do the opposite for whatever reason. It's just part of my nature. But it's always interesting to me because it seems to send a message, especially when the people, when you look around, the people that are most famous for being uber successful, multimillionaires, billionaires, that behave that way, it sends a message implicitly that you can't be successful like me unless you are this way also.
Mm.
And that message is disheartening to me. But I've I'm not as successful as they are. I don't have $1 billion company.
Mhm.
So what is your thought on that? Do you have to be that way, or can you become more circumspect over the course of time and become more discerning and adjust your message and be equally successful?
My opinion is because I've seen, obviously we think of the extreme examples that are in the news of the harsh, guy with the chainsaw or whatever, just
Yeah.
just going at it. I think there's a lot of people that aren't that way, and they're not as visible. But I think you have to I mean, because it's not what's the word, newsworthy or
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh. But I think those you still have to have an ability to access to access the chainsaw
Mm,
to because if you are a full-time pushover, you're probably not going to be where in one of those roles. But I mean, that's why I kind of like this space, which is what you mentioned earlier, uh, the ability to, I don't want to say flip the switch, but the ability to access all of the domains, which is a term that you've used as well. Um, yeah, to be you got to be harsh when it's justified, and you have to be you know compassionate, if that's the right word,
yeah.
when that's called for. And
It sounds like for whatever reason in your journey, um, probably for a whole list of reasons, maybe even some of them that aren't obvious, right? Um, that you became more discerning. Well, I'll give you an example. So, I teach every age possible in Krav Maga. I have kids as young as 4.5. I have adults in their 70s, right? And everybody in between. If I walk into a room of 25 kids that I'm teaching in a class, in a group class, when I approach one kid to provide them with feedback on their performance in that moment on whatever technique they're performing, I may approach that one kid a certain way, okay? And some of those kids they prefer and they only respond to a firm tone, right? And they don't really want fluff around any of it. Just tell me what I need to know and I'll take care of it. But then the next kid, you have to be more careful. You have to get really good at discerning what each person needs and how to deliver your message for that person in order to motivate them to do whatever it is that you're asking them to do, but also to keep them around. And how does that land with you? Does that sound similar to what it is that you've learned over the course of time?
yeah, I think it's the same. I wouldn't consider myself an empathetic. Well, let's just say that's not one of my strong suits, but which is what I try to get better at. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's we, me, and probably you, we go, well, just tell me what you want, and so that resonates with me, and I just think that's how I should tell you the same thing.
Mm,
But I think there's these guys that need, but why? But why? And then the guy's like, just tell me what you want. And then there's like you say, all that middle ground and extremes, um and people listen and learn differently.
yeah.
And so I kind of I kind of call that a little bit of a blind spot where you have to open your eyes that people don't learn or listen the
Yeah.
way that I do.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned the questioners. I don't know if you're familiar with Gretchen Rubin's work. I really love her work on the four tendencies. One of the tendencies is to be a questioner. and questioners tend to drive managers completely insane, right? And what what is hard to understand unless you have analyzed this over time and you've listened to people like Gretchen Rubin, um, is that questioners are asking questions because they need that in order to motivate them. They need to understand why they're doing something in order to feel like they're going to do it, right? It's not that they're questioning your authority, which is oftentimes the way it feels to the manager, right? And I think that's where
Correct.
managers really end up butting heads with people, is like, just do what I tell you instead of asking all the time why. But if they can just acknowledge, hey, this person's a questioner. And if I give them a little bit more information, they're going to be a lot easier to motivate of time. And it sounds like you've become really aware of various tendencies that people have and how to manage those a lot more skillfully. So that's a beautiful thing to see. You were mentioning meetings earlier, and that there are certain practices that you engage in to make sure that your nervous system, first and foremost, is prepared for that meeting. Not going in too activated. You're not going in too parasympathetic and sluggish, right? That you're trying to find that sweet spot where you can be as skillful and discerning as possible. Um, what what practices have really worked for you in that regard?
So those are all good examples of the things that you have to prepare for. Um, Really, the simplest one and kind of one of my go-tos is just catching that little bit of time before you start.
Mm,
Um, Taking, the for me the simplest breathing, just slowing it down.
mm,
I don't usually do a lot of complex, I mean, I might do a box breathing thing or a triangle breathing, but usually it's just slow in, slow out, and I feel that slows time down a little bit. And I will walk in to a phone call or to a meeting. Um, let's say let's say it's potentially an adversarial or little harsh negotiation, or somebody wants something that I'm not prepared to do. Um, but I'm again less reactionary when I do it, and I can kind of present the situation more reasonable. Um, but I don't think I think the an adversarial call or a meeting, that's fine, but I think it helps just for a good collaborative meeting as well. If I slowed myself down, then I am prepared to listen a little bit more, to you asking me why, right? And I think you said it well that it's not always um, adversarial or confrontational. It's just somebody just needs to know why. That's how they learn.
yep.
Um, and recognizing that, or being prepared to recognize that, and not getting unnecessarily irritated over that simple question.
Mm,
So I think it works on what I'm saying is I think it works, helps me prepare for adversarial. I don't mean, knives out, but I mean, it
right.
could be, but I mean, any level of negotiation or adversarial contact to purely 100% teamwork, collaborative type meetings, where everyone's got the same mission and goal. Uh, I think it helps both. So if I answered it right, just my go-to would be just a simple slow down, breath in, breath out. Um, because I usually don't have time to go off and do a 6 minute box
Right.
breathing formal session.
Yeah. So it sounds like the regardless of the type of meeting you're going into, you are assessing your nervous system before you go into the meeting, and you're engaging in whatever practice you feel like you have a buffet of options, and you're selecting a practice that you feel like is going to be most effective in that moment. And it sounds like for you, that is just a single breath, inhale, exhale, in and out through the nose.
That would be most drastically my most common
Yeah.
approach.
Excellent. But you also mentioned box breathing and triangle breathing. And for people that don't know what that is, box breathing is you breathe in for a certain amount of time, let's say it's 5 seconds, and you hold the breath at the top of the breath for the equal amount of time, 5 seconds, and then you breathe out for five and hold for five on the end of the exhale. Um, you mentioned that one. When do you use box breathing?
When I have more, I want to say more time, but when I'm not really I don't say going to do anything. When I just have the time to just sit,
Ah,
and so it's not. Um, it, like I say, I usually feel like I don't have the time to, because if I did, let me say it this way: if I did three of those, three five
yeah,
second boxes, to me that's not enough. I don't really feel complete. It doesn't feel,
interesting.
yeah. I need to do. When I first started box breathing, if you had said if you had said 5 seconds, I would have set my timer for 10.
Mm.
And I would have been, that's just, our old joke, I think probably with your classes and all the guys that we train on, it's like, no, I did 15, right? So we would do competitive box breathing, which is funny.
Yeah,
But so to me, and I'm a little bit past that now. I'm pretty
yeah,
good with 6 seconds, and I realize that's fine.
yeah.
Um, so, but I think I need to do a number of rounds for me to hit where I need to hit and feel complete or like I completed the task.
So it sounds like for something like box breathing, because you're going to do multiple rounds, you may do that during like a formal breathing session, meditation session, rather
Yes,
than as something prescriptive when you're feeling reactivity.
I think that's correct. Yes, yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah. It's really a planned. Okay, I got X number of minutes, and I've got nothing else that I need to do or want to do right now, and I'm going to sit down and do that.
Yeah, I love that. I also like what you mentioned. I totally get that people can get competitive and will extend the time frame for box breathing. What's interesting about that, and I recommend for anybody listening that if you do box breathing, that you use a pulse oximeter and you monitor what's happening to your heart rate. Because if you do five, for most people, if they do a 4 to 6 or 7 second box breath, right? So 7 seconds in, 7 seconds hold, etc. It's probably going to be calming in the sense that you should see your heart rate decrease a little bit on the pulse oximeter. But when you start going higher than that, and you wouldn't really know this, it's hard to sense it necessarily without the pulse oximeter. But if you start holding for 10 seconds or more, oftentimes what happens is instead of decreasing the heart rate and bringing the system down, it actually activates the heart rate because the breath holds are longer, and that sends a stress response in the body.
It
So
makes
it's
sense to
it's
me.
yeah,
I know that kind of where I settled in, whether it's 10 or 12 seconds, is kind of my max because
mm,
I can hold the in breath a lot longer, but I can't hold the out the if I really expel my air, I can't hold that out. So if I try to do a 15 or a 12 or whatever, I end up feeling some anxiety or whatever that
air hunger, right?
yeah. So that ends up not being a balance in which, the intent is for it to be a nice balance. So that's why I've kind of come to terms with where I'm pretty happy at whatever 8.
Yeah.
Um, and I probably should do the pulse oximeter and really look at that as well and measure that.
Yeah, and there's a time and place for everything, right? But if your goal is to calm down, probably 5 or 6 seconds is probably
Yeah.
sufficient. But if you are trying to work on like CO2 sensitivity and be able to manage higher levels of CO2, then you can play with whatever number you want that is higher than that. But yeah, it's super important, and when you're doing any of these techniques, especially if you're trying to calm your nervous system, it's super important to have some sort of objective measure of that. So a pulse oximeter is one of the best ways to do that. You also mentioned triangle breathing, and for those who may not know, that means that you in for a certain number, and then you hold the breath. Once you've inhaled fully, you hold the breath for a period, and then you exhale, but then there's no breath hold at the bottom of the exhale. So that it forms a triangle. In, exhale, in, exhale. Do you do the triangle breathing to calm and relax, or do you do that as a challenging type breath work as well, where you're trying to expand the breath holds over time?
That one for me is what helps me sleep.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more
Yeah.
about that. So,
So,
what do
and
you do this every day when you're trying to go to sleep, or is it if you wake up in the middle of the night? What's that look like?
if I wake up, so most of the time I'm pretty good. I can fall asleep.
Hmm.
But for whatever reason, like everybody else, a million thoughts going through your mind, and or whatever scenario. If I'm not ready, I'm not. I can tell I'm not falling asleep. I'll do that. Uh, and I'm trying to think my pattern. So it's not an even triangle, is it? It's the one we did a little while back. Is it 1-1-2, right? So it's um,
Like
usually
four
five.
seconds in,
Yeah,
4 seconds out.
4-4-8. I couldn't think for a
Okay,
second.
so
Yeah,
breathing in for 4 seconds,
yeah,
holding for 4 seconds, exhaling for eight.
correct. Yeah,
Nice. And
yeah,
it's that prolonged exhale that starts to calm the body and
it
the mind
does.
so that you can go back to sleep. Yeah, that's beautiful.
And I,
Um,
and I'll that'll knock me out really well.
nice. I'm curious if there when you don't have to use the breathing and you can just go back to sleep, is there a meditative component to that? Is there something like a so
Yep.
you wake up and you have all this mental chatter going on, right? Um, are you shifting your attention from that chatter to something else? And if so, what is it that you're shifting to?
Well, you're making me explore it a little bit, and now I think I'm deceiving myself. I think every time I lay down, I'm changing gears.
Hmm.
I'm whether it's just a slow in out type breath or whatever, but I'm usually kind of subconsciously saying it's time, right? It's time for
So it sounds
bed.
like your breathing is really guiding the
Yeah,
process more so than anything that is meditative or a shift of attention necessarily. The attention shift is to the breathing, right?
yeah,
So you're slowing the breathing down, whether it's just taking a few slower breaths, relaxing into that, or engaging in a specific um, triangle type breathing,
right,
whatever those numbers might be, right? You could do a what you described, the 4-4-8. The 4 and 4 are even, right? So that's a 1-1-2. You
mhm,
could also do like a 1-2-3 or 1-3-2. So if your first number, your inhale is a 4, your second number, so your breath hold could be 12, and then your exhale is 8, something along those lines, or the other way around. Inhale for 4, hold for 8, exhale for 12, that type of thing, right? But it sounds like you prefer the 1-1-2 method.
yeah. I think that simplicity is important for me.
Yeah,
Not intentionally. Just if I overthink it, then I'm back on some other
there
overthinking
you go.
track. Um,
Beautiful.
and the 4-4-8. So I mean, that to me, that's my go-to. If I lay down and I just recognize that I mean, if I'm in bed, to me, it's bedtime, and
Yeah.
it's time to go to sleep. Because if I don't, then you know, and I'm watching my sleep hygiene as best as I can. Um, like everybody, that's hard,
Yep.
and but it's like, no, it's time. I need to get to sleep because tomorrow is going to be a busy day or whatever. So that's when I say, when I lay down, I go, man, I'm still a little amped up, but it's bedtime. I'll kick in the triangle and do that. You said something that we've probably talked about before, that to me, meditation, breathing is let's say everything. I mean, that it's what anchors everything, virtually every meditation technique that you've taught me, or I've read about. Um, the breath is, in that respect, it's my anchor. That's what I go
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. So, what was your first foray into breathing and meditation? Do you remember?
I think we um, probably were exploring some of the Mark Divine stuff with the
Mm,
box breathing, uh, and we were probably introduced to a lot of things at Krav Maga,
hmm
with everything from whatever they're calling it, warrior breathing, to yoga. Um, that was another thing that breathing was part of some yoga training. So
Yeah. So you've done yoga, you've done Krav Maga. You currently doing jujitsu as well, right?
jujitsu and judo, yeah.
Oh, judo also. Nice. Are you doing judo right now?
Yes.
Nice. Okay. You've spent quite a bit of time then in self-defense martial arts world. Um, how has breathing and meditation served you in those spaces?
I think the controlled control of my breath uh, helps me with cardio. I feel that in many cases, that controlled breathing, when I say control, whatever it is, uh, allows me to maintain my kind of center um, my efforts,
Mm,
and work a little harder than maybe I would. I know that during workouts, I try to use um, I try to breathe so that, in order to get my heart rate down,
mm.
whether we're doing some kind of whether it's a hit or Tabata, whatever you want to call it, just any kind of work. When I can, I immediately shift to a control. You've taught the gears and things like that. So
hmm
um, I don't think I'm really good at all that, but I use it as much as I can.
hmm
So if I grab a little bit of it, as I say, if I can get my heart rate out of my max, and then it's time for another Tabata, or jujitsu or something like that, that I'm ready to start again.
Yeah, so it sounds like you have certain methods of breathing that you're using um, during intense physical activity, during martial arts or during preparation for martial arts or just fitness related stuff. But then it sounds like you're also describing certain types of techniques that you're using for in between sessions. So like in between rounds. So say you do 2 or 3 minute really heavy rounds. You have certain breathing techniques that you're using, and then when that round stops and you have a minute or however long to prepare for the next round, you're doing other techniques or the same techniques. What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So that's for sure a difference. So because if you're hitting a heavy bag, or in the middle of a round,
Mm,
um, you I can't really do a lot of controlled breathing. You're just, you're active. You're doing what you're doing.
mm,
Then you stop, and that's when I will do. I'm drawing a blank, but the long in, sharp second
Oh
breath,
yeah,
and then the
physiological sigh.
physiological sigh. So I couldn't think of it. Um, that's kind of my go-to in between rounds, and I'll do that multiple times. And when I'm wearing a whoop or anything like that, and I can go back and look and see, the heart rate dropping in those intervals. So that would be my 100% my go-to for that. And I
Yeah.
believe that really pays dividends for me.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
Well, that seems to be that particular technique came out of Andrew Huberman's lab at Stanford. And they've studied all kinds of meditative techniques and breathing techniques in the lab. And what they have found when they hook people up to all kinds of devices to measure heart rate, blood pressure, HRV in particular, all of those measurements, when they use the physiological sigh, it tends to be more effective than all the other techniques, which is amazing, right? Just to describe the physiological sigh for people who are watching or listening, the idea is that you take an inhale through your nose. Just think about taking a maximum inhale circumferentially around the bottom ribs. And then it's like blowing up a balloon, and the balloon starts to feel like you can't get any more air into it, but you want to get one more breath. So you blow really fast, right? But the physiological sigh, you're doing the opposite direction. You're doing an inhale. You're inflating the lungs, and when you feel like you've gotten maximum capacity through a nasal inhale, then you sip in really fast. One more inhale through the nose. So it's inhale, inhale, and then slow exhale through the nose or the mouth. Either's perfectly fine. Um, so it sounds like this. Nice and relaxed. Let all the air out. What's interesting about this technique, first of all, it's wildly successful. I use it as well. And if you use the Whoop device, then you're able to see clearly on the Whoop on the graph the difference in terms of the effect of the physiological sigh between rounds because you can see your heart rate drop precipitously, right? It's pretty dramatic. And usually within 30 seconds or so, after 3 to 5 physiological sighs, and then slowing the breath down, breathing through the nose exclusively, by 30 seconds or so, pretty much recovered and ready for the next round, which is really fantastic. I'm a huge fan of the physiological sigh. Interestingly, I've taught it to people in the past. They come back to me and they say, it's not working. My heart rate isn't going down. And I say, well, show me what you're doing. And I had someone show me this, right? It's like, well, that's not what I showed you. But let's talk
mhm.
about why that type of breathing is a problem. If you do it that quickly, you are off gassing too much CO2 and you're basically hyperventilating. And instead of lowering your heart rate is going to go up. So it's super important that people understand that the exhale be elongated. So it's a long exhale, nice relaxed exhale. You don't have to push the air out hard. But the idea is that that prolonged exhale is what brings the nervous system down. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system. So it's really important that people do that properly. Otherwise, they're going to get the opposite effect. So I love that you've incorporated that. Um, One area we haven't talked about, if you take what you've learned through breathing and meditation outside of the workplace, outside of your workouts and performance in martial arts, what about in everyday life?
I mean, I think it's the same, really.
Hmm.
It's you you're facing different issues. I don't want to say problems. They might be problems, but you're facing different issues, and
Hmm.
it gives you that same strength or that same anchor. Anchor is
Mm.
something I talk about or I think of. Um, that
I hate to interrupt you, but tell me more about that. Tell me about the anchor concept that you're talking about.
Well, it's just something that I go back to. So it's like
Mm.
it's a some people call it centering or whatever. I mean, it's just something that when you're I just grab onto for a second, right?
Mm,
It's just a concept I think of uh, as a home base.
home base.
Yeah,
Maybe anchoring you into the present moment.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah. Home base anchoring, um, as opposed to and I've done some other training where actually the concept of an anchor was something that slows you down or is detrimental. And I don't that's
Mm,
not what that's not what I'm talking about. This is more of a
gotcha.
home base or a touchstone kind of thing.
Gotcha. Yeah. So the anchor for you is something that you can focus on, whether it's breathing or something meditatively, bringing your attention into the present moment to prepare you to be skillful in that moment, is what it sounds like. Is that the case?
Yes. Yeah. And the breath whatever it begins the if it's meditation, the breath for me begins the process. It extends the process.
Mm,
It puts me back if I get off track, it brings me back. Or
mhm.
it's the technique that I use to bring me back.
Love it. Brian McKenzie once said that breathing is the remote control to the brain and the body. I think he just said the brain, and I added the body, or it was the other way around. But I like to say both of them, although they're all really the same. Brain and body are all one, right? But I think it's helpful to say both. Breathing is the remote control to the brain and the body. And I have found that to be true in my life, and it sounds like that's been very much the case for you as well. I feel like for me that these are pivotal skills, right? A pivotal skill in the psychology world, the behavior analysis world. It's kind of like if a kid is 7 years old and hasn't learned language, their world is going to be really limited, right? They're going to have a real hard time getting their needs met. There's just going to be all kinds of problems. It's probably going to result in frustration, probably going to result in acting out in some way. Um, when you teach a child language, it opens their world up in ways that are really hard to fathom. I mean, it's kind of limitless at that point. And I really see for myself that breathing and meditation are similar. They're pivotal skills that it's really hard to describe to people what is available to them if they engage in these practices. In particular, breathing, I think breathing is still kind of a hard sell, right? For a lot of people, they're like, oh, I've breathed for 40 years. Why do I need to
Yeah.
do that, right? I still hear that from people. I've breathed forever and I'm still fine, right? And I always the only comeback I know is, yeah, you may be fine, but are you living optimally, right? Are you as skillful as you would like to be? But I'm curious how you respond to that. If just around that idea of breathing and meditation being pivotal skills and really being essential to be as skillful as you want to be. What are your thoughts on that?
So to go back to your comment about read was it reading that you were talking about?
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Just language in general, being
or
able to
language.
speak.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I was thinking ahead. So you could have a kid who's whatever super good IQ, smart, but for whatever reason, kind of extreme circumstance, but didn't learn how to read. Well, all of a sudden, if they're taught how to read, they become a tremendous performer because reading is an important skill for for recall, learning, all that kind of stuff. But they were still a smart kid before. I know it's kind of hypothetical. So now, if you take someone who's maybe athletic, strong, talented, fast, whatever, and they don't ever need to access breath control, um, meditation, things like that. It's a whole skill set that they're ignoring. And many of them are again high performing without that skill set. It's like I think I heard it before. What if you woke up tomorrow and said, "Oh, I've got this left arm here, and I've never used this thing."
I
Um,
love that.
now I can, now I can really do whatever. To me, and you need to develop it, but yeah, because just to your point, I laugh at that too. That I mean, I breathe. What are you talking about? After I work out, I do all
Yeah.
this, and now I think about it, and I go, I'm not breathing diaphragmatically, and I'm, as you've shown, you're breathing up here, and it's not effective, and why not do it better?
Hmm.
If that answers your question, that's how I think of it. It's an extra, uh, especially. I mean, I'm 62 now, and there's just some things I'm not going to be able to physically do,
Mm.
um, a- and it's not getting better. So, but if there are things that I can continue to improve, breathing,
Mm.
working on the intercostals and things like that to be more efficient at that. I firmly believe that that's facilitated some of my ability to continue to work out in certain things. I mean, I'm just not going to do a lot of wind sprints. I'm not going to, there's plenty of people that are older than me that do a lot of physical feats, but like I said, it diminishes at some point, and
Yeah.
I'm kind of there, right? So, but if this is an extra skill that I can do, that gives me that cardio or whatever, that little edge, then it is something that I'm going to develop.
Yep. I love it. Bill, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you so much for being here today, and I hope
Likewise.
that we can do it again sometime in the future.
Great. Good. Thank you.